I'm going to do a video on the HD9 and the Jack H2 industrial machine that I use in my handmade bags and purses. So if you're new to my channel, I'm Deb. I'm a bag maker based in the northeast of England, and I also run a business supplying bag making hardware and interfacing. So this is my Janome HD9, sometimes referred to as Jill. This is just solely a straight stitch machine. It is a domestic, although it is a very heavy duty domestic. It can handle quite thick fabrics, vinyls, heavy sort of cotton canvases, that sort of thing, but doesn't do zigzag stitches or the decorative stitches that quite a lot of the other domestic machines can do. So I'm going to change the camera angle around just so that you can see a little bit closer, and I'll show you some of the features of the machine and show you the stitching that you can produce as well. So this is a slightly close-up angle, or closer up angle of the machine. I mainly use moon threads in the HD9. I have found that she just doesn't like Tex 70. I have used up to Tex 45, but she just doesn't like Tex 70. It is just too thick. There is a heavier thread pathway, but I've found even using that pathway with the Tex 70, it's just too much. Maybe it's my machine. I know a few other people have been able to use Tex 70, but just personally I have never been able to. But you've got the two different thread pathways. You've got the diagrams here. Mine's just threaded with the standard moon threads at the moment. I have found that prefers moon than Gutterman for some reason. So it's threaded with the moon threads. I'm not going to go into sort of how I thread the machine, but if you do want to see that, if you've got a HD9 and you want a more in-depth video on how I thread the machine, the bobbin, how I maintain the machine, the things I do each week to keep it running nice and smoothly, I'm happy to do that. If you leave a comment in the comments box back down below, I'm happy to do a video on that. You'll notice I've got a vinyl foot on the machine. I tend to keep this foot on most of the time, purely because I do use a lot of vinyl. But yeah, this is button up, button down, my bobbin winder. This is the speed control. I tend to have it set at the lowest because, well, I'm not a particularly fast sewer. Thread cutter, which I don't tend to use very often. I rather just cut my threads as I go. My reverse button, or my reverse lever is here. This is my stitch length, which the dial that shows what stitch length I'm on, and then the dial is just on the side here. So that basically is the machine in a nutshell. Very, very similar to vintage singers, sort of very, very similar to a 201K in how it's threaded and the tension dials and all that sort of thing. But it's a very, very robust machine, and it can handle a lot of layers and a lot of thickness. So I shall show you her sewing on a bit of vinyl on a double layer and then a quadruple layer to obviously simulate a crossbody strap, and then show you the stitching that she produces. So this is a double layer of vinyl. It's not a particularly thick layer of vinyl, but not a particularly thin layer of vinyl either. I've got the machine set to a standard top stitching length that I would use. There we go. Hopefully that's nice and clear and you can see those stitches there. So that is on a double layer, so a two-fold. I'm just going to move my light back out of the way. And then on 4 layers, so basically the same as if we were doing a crossbody strap. And there we go. Yeah, there we go. You can see the stitching that she produces on a 4-layer strap. So she does sew through quite strong and thick pieces of fabric. You know, very easy to use. Obviously just your foot raise at the back and obviously controlled by a foot pedal. So I'll take you over and show you the Jack H2 now. So this is the Jack H2 that I've only had a few months. This is my first foray into industrial machines. I've never actually had an industrial machine before. It's a walk and foot machine, which is obviously really handy when you're bag making, because obviously the foot walks the fabric through, like the different layers of fabric through the feed dogs. So obviously it makes it much easier when you're sewing heavy, thicker pieces of fabric together. I'm still getting used to sort of working with the machine. It is a little bit different to working on a domestic machine. In some ways it is similar to the HD9, but then in other ways it is different. The position in which you sew is different. You know, your foot pedal is static, it's there, it doesn't move. So I do find that I catch my foot pedal sometimes and set the machine away. So there's a knee lift, which is what raises the foot pedal. You do have a lever behind here, but it is quite stiff and it's not something that you'll be able to use day in, day out. So you would use your knee pedal, and your foot raises with the foot pedal as well. So that's taken some getting used to, but you know, I am getting there. So again, I'll take you in a little bit closer to show you the machine in a little bit closer detail. I always use Tech 70 in this machine. It would be fine with Tech 45. So if you want to, if you had sort of similar machines to what I have, you know, you could use the Tech 45 between the two. But like I say, I'll change the camera angle, take you in a little bit closer, and show you a few features of the machine as well. So hopefully you can see there. Yeah. Yeah, so this is the HD9. Already got threaded up with a Tech 70 thread. If you've got this machine, or if you're thinking of getting this machine and you want a more detailed, in-depth look at the machine, I'm happy to do a video on that, especially once I'm a little bit more used to using it myself. But yeah, just drop it in the comments box down below if you're interested in it, and it is something that I can work on. You'll notice that I've got a little bit of scrap fabric underneath the foot. This is a little tip that my engineer who installed the machine for me gave me. When the machine turns on, it does a little stitch, so if it's left threaded up, and there's no fabric underneath it, when it does that single stitch, when it's switched on, it can get tangled up. And he was saying that one of the biggest amounts of call outs he gets is for machines being jammed because of that. So he said always leave a scrap piece of fabric under your foot. So I always do that. So when I switch the machine on, you'll see it'll do a little stitch. Just move the camera ever so slightly so you can see a little bit better. But again, it's sort of very, very similar in, you know, the setup, apart from, you know, I don't have the buttons here for my foot up and foot down, and my bobbin winder, you can't actually wind the bobbin separately to actually stitching. You've got to wind your bobbin while you're stitching. So I always have two bobbins on the go at the same time, so I'm always winding a bobbin while I'm sewing. So that's kind of one of the biggest difference I've found with the industrial, is that, you know, if I run out of a bobbin, I can't sort of switch the motor off to wind a bobbin. You've actually, you know, your needle will still go up and down to when you're winding a bobbin on. So that's a little tip. If you can, get two of your bobbin threads, so your sewing threads, so that you can wind a bobbin at the same time as you're sewing, and then you've got another bobbin there ready to go if your bobbin runs out. So it's a similar way to thread as to the heavy pathway of the HD9. I imagine a lot of industrial machines thread a very, very similar way. Your foot, when you see it sewing, you'll see how it kind of walks across the fabric. My stitch length adjuster is on the front, and this is my reverse, and then this little dial here is basically the only thing that I ever change on this is my stitch speed. I can take it down or I can put it up, and it's similar to the HD9. I don't have it set very high. I don't sew particularly fast. I'd rather get it right than get it done quickly. There is an option where you can have your needle in the up position when you stop, or in the down position when you stop. I always have mine set for the down position, so I never sort of change that. And then this button here is so you can adjust your light, and then this button here is so that when you stop stitching, if you need to do a half stitch, you can just press that button and it'll do a little half stitch if you need to. So that's quite a handy little feature. But again, it's a straight stitch, doesn't do any of the stitches, but it does sew through very heavy and thick fabrics. So I'll do the same and show you the stitching that it does on the two folds of vinyl. So this is just the vinyl folded over once. So that's the vinyl folded over once. That's 2 layers of vinyl, and that's the stitching it produces. And then this is just quadruple folded piece. And there we go, you can see the stitching on there that has produced, and that's on the H2. So that's on Jack, so obviously, as you can see, Jack and Jill. So they are the two machines that I use the most. So those are the two machines that I use the most in my bag making. I hope you found the video helpful, especially if you're deciding on whether you want a machine, industrial or a domestic, or if you've got one and you want to decide on another machine. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm always happy to help. Like I said earlier on in the video, if you want a more detailed video on either of the machines, on how to thread them, on how I do basic maintenance, you know, keeping them clean and day-to-day running of the machines, I'm happy to do that. Please just let me know, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.